HEX is down. But is this actually a problem? Isn't this normal even? Now we see a crypto winter. Bitcoin isn't doing too well either. So of course it's not pretty to look at this HEX price. But is it pretty to look at the Bitcoin price? Crypto assets are highly correlated, and when there's a bull run, everything goes up, Bitcoin goes up, and the altcoins are expected to go up even more. The same is true the other way around, right? When Bitcoin isn't doing too great, and there's all this FUD going on with the SEC clamping down on crypto, then of course it's not only Bitcoin that goes down, but also HEX. Here comes a point. There is a way to adjust for the general market. There is a way to take out those macro influences that Bitcoin has on the altcoins. And you might have already guessed how this works. We look at the altcoin not denominated in US dollars, but in Satoshis. So we divide the HEX price by the Bitcoin price. And the way to do this in TradingView is fairly straightforward, right? You just enter HEX USD /BTC USD, and then you press enter, and then you get this chart. Now what's interesting about this chart? The first thing I find interesting is we are going down in HEX relative to Bitcoin as well. So HEX is actually underperforming Bitcoin. It's doing worse than that. What I also find interesting is when we look at the US dollar chart, this is HEX in US dollars, this is HEX in Bitcoin. And you look at those two charts, they don't look that different. So the price movements of HEX are so strong that the volatility of the Bitcoin price or the impact of general crypto can almost be completely neglected. Now what we also see here is that beginning of May of 2020, so this is where this data here starts, HEX underperformed Bitcoin by 40%. How much did it underperform since the top? 97.5%, unfortunately. So this looks even worse once we take this on a linear scale, right? This is a logarithmic scale. Look at this on a linear scale. This really looks like a destruction of capital. But I know what you might be saying now. Okay, the comparison to Bitcoin is not fair. Bitcoin and HEX are totally different assets. It rather makes sense to compare this to Ethereum, because the ups and downs of the Bitcoin price and the Ethereum price, they are more closely connected to one another. The correlation is higher. HEX is also launched on the Ethereum chain. So you want to check, can HEX at least outperform Ethereum? So I think it's totally reasonable to look at the HEX price denominated in ETH. And so the way to do this is exactly the same. We enter HEX USD divided by ETH USD. And then we get this chart. So HEX underperformed Ethereum as well. This is for the last 3 years in underperformance of 80%. And that underperformance is accelerating recently. Price didn't really do anything positive since the Pulse chain launch. Now, okay, let's continue with the next argument. What about the staking rewards? When you stake HEX, you get more HEX back. So comparing a HEX from 3 years ago to comparing a HEX today is not fair, because if you staked HEX, you would have more HEX today. Let's work with the assumption that you get 40% on your HEX staking. So that's a fairly long staking duration, right? Several years. So let's assume you got 40% per annum more HEX tokens. Does this compensate for this decline? Let's say 3 years. So after an 80% drop, you've got 20% left, but you get 1.4 times more tokens. And you do this 3 years in a row. Okay, so it's 1.4 to the power of 3. Still, you lost almost half of your purchasing power denominated in Ethereum. And that's the problem, right? You are not even liquid with your funds. So you can't just hop in and out. You have staked. You have more volatility compared to Ethereum. You've got more risk. And still, you're underperforming after staking by roughly 50%. So there needs to be better arguments here to be in HEX. There was not a crypto winter in the last 3 years. The last 3 years, Bitcoin actually went up by 180%. There's no outperformance to be seen by taking on more risk with HEX. There's no outperformance to be seen by locking in the HEX tokens in the staking program and getting rid of your accessibility to your capital. In the last 3 years, you simply just had negative performance. And this is not improving. The race to the bottom is rather accelerating.